Maurice Bardèche was a French essayist, literary and art critic, journalist, and one of the leading exponents of neo-fascism in post-World War II Europe. Bardèche also became a leading Holocaust denier and wrote extensively on the subject in his later life. Bardèche was also the brother-in-law of the collaborationist Robert Brasillach, executed after the liberation. Academic career. Bardèche was born in a modest family of Dun-sur-Aurane in the Cher department on 1 October 1907, a product of the educational opportunities of the Third Republic. Bardèche had received a scholarship and completed Hippocane at the prestigious Lycée Louis-le-Grand in Paris. There, he met Thierry Moulnier and his future brother-in-law Robert Brasillach, establishing lifelong connections. In 1928, he entered the École Normale Supérieure, where he met with the philosopher Simone Weil, Claude Jammet, Jacques Soustelle, Roger Vaillant and Georges Pompidou, future President of France. He was received at the Agrégation in 1932, and started teaching at the Sorbonne University. A year later, he described himself as a snail withdrawn into its shell. He was heavily influenced by the nationalist intellectual Maurice Bardèche and the leader of the monarchist Action Française, Charles Maurras. Bardèche initially came to prominence as an associate of Brasillach and Moulnier, writing in the journals, essentially as a literary chroniqueur. During the Spanish Civil War, he traveled several times to the country and wrote with Brasillach a history of the Spanish War, in which he called for the violent defense of order and of Francoism in front of paralyzing democracy, one like malaria. Seduced by José Antonio Primo de Rivera's Falange, his support of fascism may be dated to this period. Bardèche also co-authored with Brasillach a history of cinema, a work that influenced cinema history for years. Bardèche completed his thesis on Balzac in 1940, titled La formation de l'art du roman chez Balzac jusqu'à la publication du Père Goriot, from which he would publish a biography, Balzac Romancier. He continued to teach at the Sorbonne, moving to the Université des Sciences et Technologies de Lille from 1942 to 4. He then became recognized for his critical works. Bardèche began to write for the fascist journal Je suis partout in 1938. During the German occupation, he didn't take a position. After the execution of Brasillach, he claimed that the resistance's excesses, the bombing of Dresden and post-liberation atrocities were war crimes. After World War II, after the liberation, he was briefly arrested for collaborationism but quickly released, while his brother-in-law, Robert Brasillach, was executed. He denounced Brasillach's death as criminal. Bardèche was expelled from the national education, proscribed from giving courses in the public education system. He then founded his own literary publishing house, Les Sept Couleurs, and also founded a right-wing journal titled Défense de l'Occident in 1952, dedicating himself to rehabilitating Brasillach's works and ideology. He wrote a letter to François Mauriac in 1947, in which he attacked the épuration légale of Vichy supporters, defended collaborationism and criticized resistance members whom he called rebels against legality. His 1948 follow-up, Nuremberg à la terre promise, which was an attack on the Nuremberg trials and one of the earliest expression of Holocaust denial, saw him sentenced to a year's imprisonment for apology of war crimes, while the book was censored. This feat saw him become recognized as one of the leading thinkers of neo-fascism. However, Bardèche never served his prison term, as his sentence was commuted by President René Coty, and he was only imprisoned for a few weeks in Fresnes. He was a founder of the European Social Movement in 1951 and became its vice president, which brought him together with leaders such as Oswald Mosley, Karl-Heinz Priester and Per Engeldahl. He continued publishing his journal Défense de l'Occident from 1952 to 1982, in which ideas of a European nationalism were espoused. In 1952, he wrote another negationist book, basing it on Paul Racineau's arguments. Unlike some of his contemporaries, Bardèche made no secret of his fascism and famously wrote in the introduction to his 1961 work Qu'est-ce que le fascisme? I am a fascist writer. Quote, he was particularly attracted to the Italian Social Republic and sought to use that model as the basis for a more contemporary ideology that he termed fascisme amélioré. Bardèche also became a leading Holocaust denier and wrote extensively on the subject in his later life. He died in Paris in 1998. He was described as a prophet of a European Renaissance for which he had long hoped by Jean-Marie Le Pen, leader of the National Front Party. His wife Suzanne died in 2005. In 2012, the eldest of his 5 sons, Jacques Bardèche, made a tribute to his father on a self-proclaimed unconformists podcast website. Works: Histoire du cinéma de Noël et Style, 1935, EQD, complété en 1943. Histoire de la guerre d'Espagne, Plante, 1939. Balzac romancier, La formation de l'art du roman chez Balzac jusqu'à la publication du Père Goriot, Plante, 1940, EQD. Refondu en 1943. Lettre à François Mauriac, La pensée libre, 1947. Stendhal romancier, La table ronde, 1947. Nuremberg à la terre promise, Les sept couleurs, 1948. Nuremberg to à les feux Les sept couleurs, 1950. L'Europe entre Washington et Moscow, à Troublin, 1951. L'OEUF de Christophe Colomb. Lettre à un sénateur d'Amérique, Les sept couleurs, 1952. Les temps modernes, Les sept couleurs, 1956. Suzanne et la Taudis, Plan, 1957. Qu'est-ce que le fascisme? Les sept couleurs, 1961. Histoire des femmes, Stock, 1968. Sparta et les sudistes, Les sept couleurs, 1969. Marcel Proust, romancier, Les sept couleurs, 1971. L'œuvre de Flaubert, Les sept couleurs, 1974. Balzac Julard, 1980. Louise Ferdinand Céline, La table ronde, 1986. Elia Couteau en Blois, La table ronde, 1989. Souvenirs Boucher Chastel, 1993.